Welcome to another episode of Show and Tell Books. I'm Chantel,
And I'm Amber.
and today we're going to be talking about my favorite romance duology, The Soulmate Equation and The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren.
Such
I am
a
so excited to talk about these books. Soulmate Equation, I think, is like the most perfect romance book ever written. And every time I say that to someone, they may or may not agree, but like most people really like the books because they wrote it so well. And then True Love Experiment just came out a couple of weeks ago. And Amber and I were talking because we were both really nervous given like the perfection level of Soulmate Equation and Christina Lauren. Their books are really good, but they're also hit or miss for us. So there was a lot of pressure on book two to be good and like bring the fizzy charm that we loved in book one. And I would say it delivered. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I think it totally delivered. The one thing I was like most worried about is Fizzy as a character was kind of over the top and very
Thirsty?
thirsty. Yes. She leaned into her romance writing persona in the soulmate equation. So I was a little worried when I picked up the True Love Experiment that energy would be too much for me and I wouldn't enjoy her storyline. But I think Christina Lauren did an excellent job of getting us wholly invested in Fizzy and who she is.
Soulmate Equation is book one, and True Love Experiment is book two. A lot of people don't know this, and I don't know if it's because technically on Goodreads they're not listed that way. But like, I went to a bookstore the other day and I saw that they had True Love Experiment, and so I was like, "Oh, was it just as good as book one?" And they looked at me and they're like, "What do you mean book one?" And I was like, "Wait, you're a bookstore." And granted, it was an independent bookstore, but I was like, "How do you not know that this is a book two?" And I would recommend you read Soulmate Equation before you read True Love Experiment because the plot and the science that's introduced in Soulmate Equation is the precursor to True Love Experiment. So you do need to read it. Plus, River and Jess feature very prominently in book two. So you do need to know their love story because it's a huge deal. If you guys don't know, Soulmate Equation is about Jess. She's a single mother. She has a 7-year-old child. Fast forward to Fizzy is her best friend, and they are at a coffee shop where they like get work done. Jess is like a numbers statistician person. Fizzy's a romance author. And there's this very attractive guy, and he always comes and orders the same coffee at the exact same time. And so all of a sudden, one day, Fizzy stops him and is like, "What do you do?" And he states that he's a scientist who's working on basically a dating app that is DNA based. So there are like genes within our DNA that can match us to other people, and then that can kind of predict the likelihood of a lifelong match. And so obviously Fizzy's like, "I'm super interested in this. This would be a great premise for a book. Like, let's sign up, even though it's still in beta testing." So they both sign up. Jess gets approached by the company because her and River, who's the very hot, attractive scientist, have one of the highest compatibility matches that they have ever seen. So they're approached by the company to fake date to promote the company. Obviously, it's a fake dating romance. Spoiler or not spoiler, they obviously fall in love. And it's just so cute. River is super attentive and great, and Jess is actually like really down to earth. Their love story is perfection, really.
Yeah. And one of the things Christina Lauren did so well in writing the soulmate equation is it's a book that has a little bit of everything for everyone, meaning there is like that science aspect of it. So if you're into kind of thinking about that science fiction stuff, that
Or even
element,
like Allie Hazelwood kind of
right,
vibe.
right. Um, there's humor. There's excellent humor throughout the book. There's really cute moments that have you like kicking your feet up and going, "Ee!" Like just because you get so invested in their story and the development of their relationship. And there's just those moments that are like, oh, that's something my husband has done for me. Like when he offers the jacket when she's cold or whatever. So there's that, this is attainable romance instead of just romance you read and you're like, oh, this doesn't happen in real life, or I'm scared if this happens in real life.
I don't know if like the science itself is actually accurate, but the overall story felt like it could actually happen to your next door neighbor or to you, which is what I loved about it because, like you said, it felt real. Unlike half the other romance books everyone's super in love with, they're not realistic in the least. And so this one was just great.
Well, and what's funny is I think I read somewhere that Christina Lauren didn't intend to write a follow-up. So it was
They
fan
didn't.
driven of, hey, we love Fizzy. We want her story. When is it going to happen? And because of the fan drive to read Fizzy's story, they wrote The True Love Experiment. Fizzy is a romance author and she's a serial dater. Like, she is known for going on many, many dates, not necessarily with the same person, and just being open and honest about it. And like when fans talk to her about, oh, well, why are you still single? She's like, oh, I just haven't met the one yet. Or she makes jokes of it and makes light of it. But something happens in the soulmate equation that kind of changes her perspective on relationships and what she's looking for and her approach to dating. And that's where the true love experiment picks up, where she's in this writer's block and mental crisis of who she thought she was and what she thought romance was is totally in question. And then she gets approached to be on a show, which
Just
was
so random.
so random. But the premise of the show was so interesting to me because it's that mix of like The Bachelor and other reality dating TV shows that we've seen literally everywhere. But they use the technology from the soulmate equation to give it a little bit of edge. But of course, Fizzy being Fizzy and very independent and driven says, I will play your game. I will do your show, but it's going to be on my terms. Like,
I
I'm not
love
going
this
to be
part.
sequestered in a house with all of these people in order to film. We will only film 4 days a week. And in the meantime, I get to do what I want.
Well, my favorite part is then she makes a list of demands, and the 8 guys who she's dating have to fit the hero archetypes of normal romance books. I loved that. It was so funny seeing who they cast as like the vampire or the golden retriever or like all these like different characters. It added a little nugget of like comedic genius to the entire narrative. And in a way, like this book is almost like a reward for romance readers because you get a lot of the little snippets. Or she calls Connor at the beginning, who's the producer, she calls him a DILF, and then she calls him, I don't remember, another, like basically just like tiny little nicknames that are like little references to romance books that he has to Google. Full disclosure, I did have to Google that one. Um, it was spectacularly done.
Like I said, it was so good to see the character development that they gave Fizzy, because in the first few chapters, I remember texting you and being like, oh, like I'm nervous because Fizzy is horny.
Yes.
She's all about talking about men like they're slabs of meat.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really want to read 300 plus pages of a woman just
Trivializing.
trivializing, minimizing men to their physical appearance. But luckily that didn't last. And they actually gave her the opportunity to explore more than the physical connection.
Prior to the book coming out, we saw that other authors and other people were reviewing it, and there was one in particular who was saying that Fizzy was super, super horny. We both texted each other in the beginning being like, wow, Fizzy's a whole other level. And if this is what the book continues to be, I don't know if I can do it. Especially because she is such a staunch defender of people who read romance, and rightly so, but how there's multiple points throughout the book or conversations where people are like, women who read romance books get marginalized or, judged because of what they're doing, and, the whole guilty pleasure and all of the stuff. And I 100% agree with it, but it kind of struck me as odd because Fizzy basically does that same thing to men in the beginning of the book. But I really did love that changed, and she evolved as a character, and she matured, and she started realizing that was part of her problem, is that she was only seeing them as slices of meat. And if that is like something that you're nervous about, read the book, because it really is amazing, because you see Fizzy grow.
So I remember texting you, I think I made it to the second chapter, and it's from Connor's perspective, the producer for the TV show that Fizzy's going to be on. And I think I finished it and texted you like, oh, I'm in love with Connor. And it's been 5 pages. Like, he is possibly one of my most favorite male leads from recent romance reading. He's a single dad who co-parents with his ex-wife, and their relationship is very amicable. They're, very supportive of each other, and he kind of has some quips about the man that his ex-wife is with, which add to the humor, and give you insight into like his British mind, which just is fantastic. The relationship that he has with his daughter is excellent. And I loved the way that they tied in these two individuals' worlds through their daughters going to, well, Fizzy's best friend Jess, her daughter goes to the same school as Connor's daughter. So they keep like having these run-ins and are thrown together to the point where Fizzy kind of convinces Connor that they have to go on these joy adventures, like specifically to experience joy, because they both are in a stage of life where they're not sure they've felt joy in a while. And that's where like their friendship begins, is in these adventures to bring joy. And I loved that aspect of it.
The joy adventures was such a cute thing. It reminded me very much of like the concept behind the fake dating in the American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armas, right? That they go on different adventures to kind of help prompt a story out of the female heroine in that book. But I really liked like the joy adventures because that's what it was. It was hanging out, finding friends. Like both of them are in ruts, and they both like needed something to get them out of their head, especially because that was every Friday. So they'd be filming for 4 days, and then on Friday they'd hang out, and then they would inadvertently on Saturday hang out a lot too. But that's because of the kids and stuff like that. But it just felt real. And I do agree that Connor was perfect. He reminded me of, so my two favorite book boyfriends right now are obviously Connor and then Will from Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. They're both just realistic, which is what I really loved. My one complaint, True Love Experiment is written in a dual point of view. I really wish Soulmate Equation had been written in a dual point of view, because I would have loved to have understood River's brain a little bit more, because I think that's what made this book so great. I think if we had only had exclusively the point of view of Fizzy, her thirstiness and horniness would have been over the top. But because we have Connor's personality and thoughts to kind of break it up a little bit more, it helped give the book more of a neutral kind of stance, and then also made you understand where Fizzy's coming from and Connor specifically. So I thought that was really artfully done.
What I appreciate about both of these books is the time frame that they take place in. So it's not a matter of days, it's not like a couple of weeks. Both of these books take place over months of time period. And if you consider the first few chapters of True Love Experiment, it's actually kind of more like a year, because the first chapter sets up context for where Fizzy is at emotionally and mentally. So oftentimes when authors approach the soulmate trope in books, it's instant love, instant chemistry, just very fast paced. You don't really know how long it's taking for their relationship to develop. Whereas in the Soulmate Equation and the True Love Experiment, you see time pass. And so it's a couple of months, but I feel like it added to that realistic level of there was time passing to allow for these characters to develop true feelings, not just the instant connection or, oh, we might be soulmates, let's make it work.
I really loved also like that the True Love Experiment brought in the science from book one too, which again is why you need to read book one and then read True Love Experiment. But you submit your DNA, they match you in a system, or they put you in a system, and then it brings up like a whole list of matches, and there's different levels to every match depending on like the likelihood that you're gonna last throughout your life. And the higher the number, obviously the better the match. So there's a lot of pressure in book one because River and Jess have a high match. And I really liked that. The premise of book two was if the science is accurate, or if the viewers who are watching the TV show can spot the chemistry, and if the chemistry is more important than what the actual science brings. And I love that aspect, because that's probably a thought you have in book one is, well, is it enough? Like, is the number alone just gonna like promise a for sure match and like lifelong commitment? And that may or may not be true, but I liked that they brought in that aspect, that it was like it was both. Plus, definitely read book two if you've read book one, because there's a part about book one, the epilogue, that made me really mad because they don't reveal it, and then they totally like let it slip in book two, and it was just like this tiny thing, and I was like, wait a second, hold up, did you see that? They just like put that in there with no fanfare. You'll know what I'm talking about.
I also just thought that the storyline was so creative for both of them, having the science aspect in the first one, but then the way the dating show was run in the second one, where they met the guys based off of Fizzy's casting requirement of these tropes for the heroes, but then to have the shooting take place over 4 days and then open it up for the audience to vote on who should get eliminated from the dating pool for Fizzy, and then they film the next 4 days for the next week's episode. I just thought that was creative. I haven't seen that done before. And then as the relationships form amongst these different individuals, you see Fizzy's perception of them, but you also get Connor's perception and observations as the dating show goes on, which was just really funny. And then to like, as the story is coming to the climax, the crew starts kind of giving little hints and input to how they think it's going to turn out. And it just was so heartwarming.
The conclusion and the declaration, we'll just say, I like almost cried. It was, yeah. One, I want this dating show to become real life because it seems way more plausible than half the dating shows that are currently popular. But two, I kind of want a movie version of this, or like a TV series of this, because you fell in love with the characters as you were reading, both in book one and in book two.
I don't stay up late to read books anymore, but I couldn't put this book down. I didn't get a chance to read it during the day, so it was later, like I had put my kids down for bed, and that's when I finally got to pick it up. And I tried to go to bed at like a reasonable-ish time, and I couldn't fall asleep because I just had to keep reading.
Yep. I read it in 4 hours.
Wow.
That's how good it was. So we highly 100% recommend it. Both these books got 5 stars for me. Did you give them? What did you rate them? Do you know?
I gave both of these a 5 stars. So this is one of the times that we're actually in 100% agreement and gave the same star rating. Do you want to talk about the spice scale? Because I feel like it's a little bit tricky on this one.
This is. All right, we did say that this one might be slightly more spicy than book one, just mainly based off of how Fizzy thinks. So we gave Soulmate Equation a 3 on our spice scale. I would say this is about a 4, which is about with like Thank You for Listening or Book Lovers, which is a slightly more spice, but I think that's actually pretty accurate. So book one's a 3 and book two is a 4.
I feel like it's a little bit spicier than Thank You for Listening.
So we can do like a 4.5.
Yeah, I think I would say it's a 4.5 on our spice scale, just because there are Fizzy's inner monologue is just thirsty and romance novel-y.
Yep, accurate. So it is more spicy than book one.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Show and Tell Books. We hope you enjoyed our discussion on the Soulmate Equation and the True Love Experiment. If you have read a book that you think we'd love just as much, let us know in the comments. And remember to like and subscribe.
See you guys.
Bye.